The fall of the House of Assad in Syria, and now it's under new management. We've got a bunch of jihadists, former perhaps, who are running this country, which is in a very strategic geopolitical location. What's going to happen in Syria? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for the broader Mideast? We'll talk to our friend Bill Roggio about this. He is a senior editor at Long War Journal. Bill, first of all, we haven't really heard much about these rebels, or whatever we're calling them today, in a while. And then all of a sudden they take Aleppo and it's like, oh yeah, these guys just took the second biggest city, second most important city in Syria. And then they took Damascus just a few days after that with, it felt like barely a fight. Did anyone see this coming? How'd this happen?
Hey, Buck, thanks for having me on. Yeah, this caught everyone by surprise. There was a ceasefire between the brutal Assad regime that's, it's hard to not be happy that they're gone, and various so-called rebel groups. One of them is fully inundated with jihadist organizations. Another backed by Turkey. We just had this lull, and lo and behold, on November 27th, the group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and the Syrian National Army, they coordinate an operation. They go against Assad's forces, and within 10 days, they take Damascus. Assad flees to Russia. Why does this happen? Why did no one see this coming? It's a great question, Buck, and I don't have the answer. I think everybody was looking at a lot of different problems, Russia, Ukraine. And then right in the region, you have Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Gaza against Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Israel and Iran trading blows, the Houthis dominating the Red Sea, shutting down U.S. shipping, international shipping. And I think a lot of intelligence agencies got stretched. I think the Turks saw an advantage here, and they organized this offensive. They have their motivations. One of them, for one, anti-Assad, and two, the Kurdish groups that are in control of large areas of northern and eastern Syria are their sworn enemies. So the Turks, they saw an opportunity. They mustered their forces and they struck. And the Assad, again, collapsed like a house of cards. Clearly, Assad did nothing to improve his security forces. And then I would also argue that Iran has been distracted. It's been mired in a war in Lebanon. It's supporting Hezbollah and supporting the Houthis in the Red Sea, and trying to get support to Gaza, and in exchanging blows with Israel. So I think you had Iran's focus taken away. Russia also a skeleton crew in Syria dealing with its fight in Ukraine. And, I think it's a masterful stroke by the Turks, and by no means, I think we just exchanged one horrible regime for probably several horrible regimes. I don't think anyone's going to take full control of Syria at this point.
Well, let's get into some of this. This guy, Ahmed al-Shara, who was formerly called Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, that was his nom de guerre, right? He is the head of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. He is, for now, de facto in charge. At least that's how it's being reported. They say that he was formerly affiliated with al-Qaeda. That feels, when they're using the al-Qaeda term here for somebody, it's really hard, I think, as an American, not to say what the hell is going on here. So what are we supposed to think about this guy?
Yeah, we should think nothing that other than once a terrorist, always a terrorist. I think a little background. I refer to him as Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, or Jalani is how I refer to him here. He went into Iraq after the U.S. invasion, joined the ranks of al-Qaeda, if he was not a member of al-Qaeda even beforehand. He's a Syrian, and al-Qaeda had a significant network there. Still does. He detained by the U.S. and put in the Buqa prison system, which is known as the University of Jihad in Iraq. Al-Qaeda controlled those camps, those prison camps. They indoctrinated, they trained, they recruited its leaders and its as well as its rank and file. What the Iraqi government freed him, and sometime in 2010 or 11, for reasons unknown, and he returned to Syria, and he immediately took control of al-Qaeda's branch there. And once the Arab Spring began, he, became a major leader within the resistance, or well, I won't call them resistance, with the jihadist fighting the Assad regime. And he had get this, but
Wait,
he was
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I didn't want to jump in there. You said he supported what?
He reported to none other than Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the emir of the Islamic State. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was the head of al-Qaeda in Iraq, which became known as the Islamic State in Iraq. And Baghdadi wanted to control the jihad in both Iraq and Syria. Gilani wanted to control the jihad in Syria and leave Iraq to Baghdadi. And Baghdadi took the dispute to al-Qaeda emir Ayman al-Zawahiri, who succeeded Osama bin Laden. Gilani won. He gained control of the jihad in Syria, created a group called Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Nusra Front. That was al-Qaeda's official branch in Syria. So it's quite a pedigree. How are you a former jihadist when you reported to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the first emir and caliph of the Islamic State?
Well, see, this is what I want to ask: is this guy Gilani? I mean, was he ordering suicide bombings, captives to be mutilated and executed? I mean, all the horrible stuff that we know jihadists in Syria were doing. Some people,
by no means was he as public and as brutal as Baghdadi's crew in Iraq and Syria, but he did order suicide bombings. He did order the slaughter of civilians and captured Syrian troops. So he is someone who is not to be trusted. Look, Buck, I don't think, the former leader of the KKK, if you had the leader of the KKK, if he turned around tomorrow here in the United States and just said, I'm not KKK anymore, do you think he would really be accepted in the political fold? But somehow you could be a jihadist that orders suicide attacks and the murder of civilians. And here in the United States, we could say, oh, he's okay. This is a guy we could work with.
It's just amazing to me that we're at this point where there's all this celebration over the ouster of Assad, and then it's like, yeah, we got this former al-Qaeda guy who's in charge. So let's come back to this in a second, because I'm wondering what you think is going to happen now. You mentioned that there'll be kind of a few different governments, but we'll get to this in a second. Our sponsor here is Done With Debt, because people are still racking up bills, and there are a lot of people across the country who, because of the incredible inflation that we've suffered through, the day-to-day expenses, their groceries, the things that they need, the gas station, all that has resulted in really high bills that they can't pay, and they need help. But Done With Debt is there for you. DoneWithDebt.com has aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. And Done With Debt stands between you and bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. They have a plan to put more money in your pocket month one, and Done With Debt is accepting new clients right now, but you need to hurry. Some of their debt strategies are time sensitive. You don't want to miss out. Let Done With Debt help you make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 888-322-1054 right now. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. All right, Bill, take out your national security analyst crystal ball, if you would, for me. What the heck happens to Syria now? I mean, what does this look like?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see that Gilani and his Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, they're going to consolidate control in that corridor, the M5 highway, which is, runs from Damascus through Homs up to Aleppo and Idlib. That's going to be the strong point for the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. The Syrian National Army, very likely, and it cooperates with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. That's right, and it's taken the fight to the Kurds, which really are the PKK, or the Kurdistan Workers' Party, by the way, which the U.S. supports in this fight. But there's just no good guys here to support Buck. This is the real problem. It's just a series of bad to worse. The PKK is a designated terrorist organization for killing over 50,000 people in Turkey. That's why the Turks have a dog in this fight, and they back jihadists to fight Marxist terrorists. So the Syrian National Army, they're taking the fight to the PKK, or what we call the Syrian Democratic Forces.
Are they up in the,
North-
bottled up in the north and the northeast? Is that basically where the PKK is operating still? Okay.
Yes, they're operating out of the north and the northeast. That's where the Syrian National Army is strongest as well. So and then you have a couple of other independent rebel groups in the south, some of them that do coordinate with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So I think you're going to see these fiefdoms, or the balkanization of Syria. And
so it's a fail. I mean, it becomes a failed state, right? I mean, this is kind of like Libya post Gaddafi then, which just turned into militiaville.
Yeah, Syria was already a failed state. You already had this balkanization. You're just replacing Assad with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and Jilani. So they get an expanded. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was confined to this northeastern corner of northeastern Syria, and the Turks gave them protection. So if you think the Turks are the good guys in this one for going after the PKK, again, it's hard to pick a winner in Syria. We shouldn't even try.
Where are the 900 Americans that, as I understand it, are still in Syria, U.S. soldiers I'm talking about here, who are still in Syria, and what is their mission set right now?
They are primarily along the border of Iraq and in northeastern Syria. So there's in this one area in the Tanif, these are actually Arab militias that we coordinate with. And then they're working with the PKK or the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces in northeastern Syria. So they're at a smattering of bases in that area. They primarily rely on the SDF for their ground security. I'm very concerned. I have been. The Iraqi militias have been attacking them. What happens when these Turkish-backed militias, if they start advancing on the areas where American bases are they going to give them wide berth? I don't know, and I don't want to find out. We've had American soldiers killed, a couple killed and several wounded in a variety of attacks from the Iraqi militias. Will the Iraqi militias, these are Iranian-backed Iraqi militias, are they going to reinitiate attacks? It's just an absolute.
So let me just get to this, because I think a lot of the people that are watching or listening, this is the thing that they would want you to wrestle with right now. I mean, should we just pull out whatever American presence we have, just say, adios, we're done here, and just let the chips fall where they may? Is that the best option for the incoming Trump administration?
I think it's one of the two best options. The first option is that leave and let the chips fall as it may. We may be forced to leave if the Syrian National Army is successful against the Syrian Democratic Forces. If we are to stay, now the purpose of that mission, of those troops there, primarily is to fight the Islamic State. And what happens if we leave? We saw what happened when the Islamic State took over large areas of Syria. That didn't work out well for you. So we do have a legitimate national security need there. But there's another part of this too. So if we are going to stay, we need to beef it up. These bases, they maybe should be consolidated. And I would want a significant ground, for maybe a battalion of troops at each base in order to protect our forces there. But they've been strung out across Syria. I think it's very dangerous. If we're not willing to reinforce them, Buck, it's really difficult for me to argue to keep those troops in Syria. And there's one more thing. Yeah. The U.S. is talking about leaving Iraq by 2026. The Biden administration signed an agreement with the Iraqi government. And if the Trump administration follows through on that, there's no way. They may just have to leave by default because they can't be supported without the U.S. presence in Iraq.
Let's come back into, I want to know, to the degree we can describe it, the differences between the Islamic State and the people that comprised it, which Trump helped smash U.S. military back in 2016, and the people who have now taken over in Syria and have taken over Damascus. We'll get there in a second. But first, our sponsor here is IFCJ, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They wish you a blessed beginning of the holiday season as you gather with family, friends, and all those who are grateful for God's blessings. Let's also remember those who are facing hardships, in need of fellowship and hope. That includes Israelis who are threatened daily by attacks from enemies on all sides. During these hard times, Israelis are thankful to the fellowship for food and basic assistance, which is truly life-saving aid when much of the world has turned its back on the state of Israel. Your gift of $25 will help provide a food box to an elderly Jew or Jewish family who are suffering and in desperate need. A gift of $100 will help provide 4 of these life-saving food boxes. This holiday season, please consider standing with Israel and the Jewish people. Go to supportifcj.org to make a gift now. That's supportifcj.org or give at 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. All right, Bill. So can we even tell what the difference between ISIS, remnants, Nusra Front, HTS? Are there people that have fought in all of these, and what do they really want other than control of Syria? Do we have some reason to believe that's sufficient? Do they want to become some kind of a platform for the global jihad? I mean, what are the risk factors as you see it?
There's only degrees of difference between the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and the Islamic State. They share the same goals, Buck. They want to establish their Islamic Emirate in Syria and then create a global caliphate. Look, the Gilani and crew don't cast this aside just because he gets cast as being a pragmatic leader. When Gilani supposedly broke with al-Qaeda, he did it with a senior al-Qaeda leader sitting at his side. He had the approval of al-Qaeda. So al-Qaeda viewed this as a pragmatic move to soften the group so that it could receive foreign support. Remember the Taliban, how we fell for it, Buck, right? Not you and I, and I'm sure not your listeners, but the Biden administration, even the Trump administration, in cutting the deal with the Taliban. It was a bad deal. It was a mistake. And we thought they were moderate. We thought that was a group we could work with. If we couldn't figure it out that the Taliban were bad, to me, it's no surprise that someone like Gilani is going to dupe us. But make no mistake, he's a hardcore jihadist. There are he claims there's no foreign fighters and he has no connections. That's what he said during the break. We don't have any links to external groups. He didn't say, I denounce al-Qaeda, I renounce my oath of allegiance. He said, we just don't have external links. Meanwhile, there are al-Qaeda groups that are fighting both within Gilani's rank and file, as well as alongside them in Syria. This is the same playbook basically the same playbook that the Taliban used to convince us that we could leave Afghanistan and everything will be fine. We now know there's al-Qaeda training camps and a whole host of infrastructure, which I've documented.
In Afghanistan, I guess this is a good place to ask you about how things are going in Afghanistan. Sounds like not so good.
Not so good. Yeah, the UN should issue another report. The last report issued over the summer. Al-Qaeda was operating training camps in 12 provinces. So that's not 12 training camps, but I know at least one province has 4 training camps. Things are so much worse than they were pre 9/11.
What are they? I know this is going to sound to people like a dumb question, but I think it's an important question to just sort of get us back. What are they training for, Bill?
They're training for global jihad. Fighters from Afghanistan, groups like the Turkestan Islamic Party, which is an al-Qaeda affiliate. Its leader, Abdullah Haq al-Turkestani, sits on al-Qaeda's Central Shura, or its Central Governing Committee. He sends fighters, and there's a whole Turkestan Islamic Party contingent that fights in Syria. They use it to train, to refit, and to plan their operations. Now, what you'll hear from people, the Obama administration, well, we haven't detected any plots. They haven't launched.
Well, I assume you mean the Biden administration, right? Although probably about a lot of crossover there too. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, my bad. They would have said the same thing if they would have withdrew from Afghanistan. They're telling us that they're not a problem because they haven't detected any plots. I would just remind people that between the first World Trade Center attack and the second World Trade Center attack was 8 years. So
you study these guys. You study these guys every day. I used to, Bill, as you know, but I'm out of the game now, right? Like I'm like a guy who did his time as a patrolman on the streets, and now I don't know what's going on in these mean streets. I'm sort of in retirement from the CT world. Do you really think? I mean, honestly, do you really think that they're gearing up to start another war with the West and America and our allies and everything else, given what the last 20 years have looked like for them? Or, what's your real feeling on that? Because it just feels like, wow, you guys really want to do this again? You really want to do this again?
Well, we operate in terms of election cycles of 2 and 4 years. They operate in terms of decades and generations. they're keeping their goal. Ultimate goal is to establish a global caliphate, to impose its harsh version of Sharia or Islamic law on all. How they do that? They do it by forming emirates. What is Afghanistan today? The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. What did Jilani declare and his fighters declare in Syria? The Islamic Emirate in Syria. Right now, they're focusing on the near. They put aside the far enemy, right? The near enemy. Build those caliphates. They're not directly. Al Qaeda is far more clever and far more patient. The Islamic State's mistake and its demise came because it came out the gate swinging, and it, decided to take. It was an easy target. It was a lightning rod for us. Al Qaeda has taken a more patient, a more clever approach. Just because they're not plotting or executing an attack here in the United States today, or attacking an embassy today, doesn't mean that next week, next month, or next year that isn't going to happen. They didn't stop being our enemies just because we disengaged from Afghanistan, because we disengaged from Iraq, just because we're seeking to end these so-called endless wars. It takes two to fight a war, and Al Qaeda hasn't stopped. They've changed their tactics. Actually, they've never really changed. They've always focused on the near enemy first. That's where they've always focused 95% of their effort. And I think that's something that's really misunderstood by counterterrorism analysts.
It's not feeling like it's going so well in the Middle East as the Trump administration is about to take hold. Although there are some bright spots, right? I mean, the diminishing of Hezbollah and Hamas military capability very strong. Iran is far less of a sort of a proxy, the terror proxy czar, whatever you want to call them. I mean, they're not able to do what they were before. So do you feel like overall the Middle East, as we're coming into this new administration, speaking of administration cycles, is it more opportunity or more destabilization as you see it? Where's the overall trend?
Yeah, if you would ask me this question 6 months ago, I would have said been very negative. Right now, I describe it as a push. I mean, look, Syria certainly has thrown a wrench into the whole works, but on the Iran side, the Shia side of the coin, the Iranian-backed axis of resistance, the loss of Syria, that was the linchpin for the Iranians to build its land bridge, or that Shia crescent where they funnel weapons and munitions and fighters from Iran through Iraq through Syria into Lebanon to supply Hezbollah in its fight against Israel. They've lost that. That is gone. Unfortunately, what's replaced it is far worse, or maybe a greater threat to the West in the long term. Not so much in the short term, but so look, and I think Israel has a unique opportunity. Iran on its back foot, as you noted, they have taken significant blows. Hamas has had significant losses. Israel decimated Hamas or Hezbollah's leadership and rank and file up until the signing of that ill-timed ceasefire. The Israelis, if they went on the offensive against Hezbollah, they could break them. I mean, not to fully defeat them, but beat them back so that there may be a minor player in the Middle East instead of a dominant force. So looking at this, the Iran axis looks to be significantly hurt. If the Trump administration was willing to break the Houthis and their stranglehold on the Red Sea, it's another Iran-backed group that is in Yemen. That is just a stain on the Biden administration and on the U.S. honor for a third-rate militia to dominate international shipping, and the United States needs to lead a coalition to destroy the Houthis. That would really set the Iranians back. This Al-Qaeda Islamic State problem, it's a persistent threat. It's one that needs to be managed. We're never going to muster the troops to go in like we did in Iraq in 2003 or Afghanistan in 2001 after 9/11. That's just not on the horizon, absent a massive attack. But it's a problem that does need to be dealt with. It's one we can't take our eye off. Look, the people took the eye off the ball in Syria, and now you have a jihadist regime that is in charge of a significant portion of the country.
Bill Roggio, everybody go check out his latest on at Long War Journal. And our sponsor here is Wide Moat Research. If you're an occasional investor or an everyday investor, finding good advice is tough. But Brad Thomas is a really smart guy with a long and proven track record. He's an expert in the world's largest asset, which is bigger than stocks and bonds combined. Brad launched his own New York Stock Exchange listed ETF and he's on a mission to help everyday investors in the stock market, sharing the insights he's gained from his network of investors that have followed his direction. Brad's opening membership to his research in a whole new way. It begins with his top investment opportunity, which he thinks could deliver huge gains as the new administration moves into the White House. He insists it's one of several investments you must move your money into before the end of 2024. Start by going to this new website, bradalert.com. That's Brad, B-R-A-D, bradalert.com. Bradalert.com, paid for by Wide Moat Research. All right, my friend. Well, let's hope that Trump fixes the Middle East. What do you say?
Yeah, I hope so. I'd like to see him take the shackles off the Israelis, let them finish off Hezbollah and deal a blow to Iran and, just manage this problem, take the fight to the Houthis. And I think it's a quick win for the Trump administration. And just don't take the eye off the ball, particularly in Afghanistan. It's very dangerous.
Bill Roggio, thanks so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Buck. Always a pleasure.